Introducing a revolution in roofing. The elegance of Spain now in metal. At LCA Metal, we blend artistry with strength. Our metal sheets capture the classic charm of Spanish design while offering unmatched durability. Resistance to all weather, our sheets are as tough as they are beautiful. These sheets promise longevity and style. With LCA Metal, your roof becomes a statement. Proudly made in San Jacinto, California, our sheets are a testament to American craftsmanship and innovation. Each piece is crafted with precision and care, ensuring the highest quality. In San Jacinto, we not only embrace tradition, but also push the boundaries of technology to bring you the best in metal roofing. Choose LCA Metal for a roof that stands the test of time. Environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and stunningly beautiful, our metal sheets are more than just a choice. Call or visit us today at 951-654-2874.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Crystal Ruiz, and I am your host. I'm here today with Malcolm Lilienthal. And Malcolm used to be a council member for Hemet, California. But you're also, what type of therapist are you?
Marriage and family.
Do we call you doctor?
No, you say associate.
Associate. And so you're a marriage and family
Therapist.
Therapist. Oh, wow. And what is a marriage and family therapist? What is that?
It's kind of like what you're thinking of as someone who works with individuals. Mm-hmm. And we do have that marriage and family emphasis where we work with families. So couples or entire interventions with entire families. So that's the focus, but we do mostly individual work. And it could be from young to middle age to older people.
And what type of work is it? Do you do counseling? Is it grief counseling? What is it?
All the above. So we can do anger management. We can even do life coaching. We can do individual counseling and anger management and depression groups, anxiety groups, AA groups.
Oh, we're seeing a lot of all of that right now, aren't we?
Yes.
Has it increased? How long have you been doing this?
Since 2016.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And what, I'm going to ask you kind of a weird question, I guess. Why? I mean, this to me sounds like some heavy stuff, because some people have some really heavy issues that you'd be dealing with.
I like to solve problems and kind of show people like this is how the technology in between your ears works. So if you learn how to hijack
technology between your ears,
they call it the brain.
I've never heard of it called that.
Sometimes your brain can get hijacked and then you experience these sensations like anxiety, depression, and then most people think they can't, overcome it, but you can. So my job is to rehabilitate a person back to just being human.
Oh, I think we're all in that boat right now, especially after COVID. Did you notice an increase in like anxiety and depression and these kind of issues through COVID?
I was full during COVID.
Were you?
Yes, heavily full. And then what was unique about me is I was still seeing people in person.
Oh, wow.
So people were looking for that, even though they were kind of a little bit afraid. So I did everything I could to, protect myself and my family. Having people, checking people at the door and things like that. But for the most part, I stayed open during COVID because
God bless you for
it.
that. God bless you for that, because that was really important. I think you're right. People needed to see face to face. Most people had issues, and I'll be honest. It was really weird for me after COVID. I'm not somebody who has anxiety. I'm just not built that way, right? But after COVID, I went shopping. I used to love window shopping. I would go, and we didn't have any money anyway. And we would go from the time I was a teenager on up with my mom or my dad, and we would just walk through the mall and we would look at things and we would laugh and giggle about, oh, that dress would look so good on so and so, and they would love that, but it's the ugliest dress you've ever seen in the whole world. And so we enjoyed that. But some things we found we would just pick up, and buy if it was throughout the year, and then give them at Christmas to those we thought would fit, right?
Yeah.
But once COVID hit, that stopped. Like, you couldn't go out, right? But when COVID was over and I tried going to the mall, I walked into the Walmart. I almost had a panic attack right in the middle of the Walmart. People were so crazy and so close. They wanted to walk really close to you. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Christmas time, I had to step away. I had to just step back. It took quite a long time for that to get over, for me to get over that. Every now and then I'll still feel weird like that. Like it's, I don't want to.
What do you think the apprehension was?
I think it's because we were locked down. I think it's because we were so, oh, don't go near your neighbors. Don't stay 6 feet away. Oh my gosh, and here all this is in your head. And don't, oh my God, don't have a sneeze in a Walmart. My God, you'll start a stampede. That's how bad it was. And I was worried more for my family, my kids, So I think all of that, just that I had to get out. Now, I remember, and I don't know how much you know about me, but I was in a wheelchair for a good 5 years until I never walk again. Being in the wheelchair for the first time at Christmas, I had this really bad experience. I was in the wheelchair, couldn't walk, very stressed because it was the first time I'd ever been out in the wheelchair in public at a Walmart at Christmas time. Big mistake.
So now you're self-conscious.
Well, it was more than that. Some lady is barreling through with her cart, right up at the front of the stands, not in the very front, but where the people are lined to pay, right? Barreling through with her cart. She catches my pant leg, starts dragging me down the Walmart. I'm banging against the side of the cart like this, and I'm screaming. My mom and sister are chasing after me, screaming, and I'm trying to get her to stop, and finally I had to hit her cart to unhook it, and she gets mad at me. I'm like, you just dragged me from across by the entrance all the way to the pharmacy side without even thinking.
How did she not know?
Exactly. I mean, did you not just see a wheelchair just going bang, bang, bang against the side of your cart? It was craziness. So that, I think, is where it really started. But getting out afterwards, I mean, it took forever for me to get. And when I'm in the wheelchair, sometimes I have to be in the wheelchair during, because my knee doesn't always do what it's supposed to do. And I went to, not this year, but the previous year's Candy Cane Lane, the first one. And there were so many people, and I was in that wheelchair again, and I got that
feeling.
Right. But it was, again, right after COVID. And so I just had to kind of move back, especially when somebody whacked into the side of the chair and it was a newer wheelchair and the leg of the wheelchair came apart, like disassembled. Took them 45 minutes to get it fixed. And in the meantime, people were all trying to push around us. And I'm going, oh my gosh. So I had to kind of pull back and be, I'm fine over here. You just go over there. But that to me is vulnerability because you're in a position lower. People don't look down. That lady obviously in the Walmart didn't look down, even when she's barreling through. People just don't look down. But when you think about it, walking around a mall after COVID, why should I have anxiety? Why would I have that? I've never had it a day in my life.
Why not?
But I'm just not built that way. I'm just not an anxious person. I'm not, I don't stress. I don't get like that. But
before COVID.
Well, other than the wheelchair thing, never. I was not like that. I worked in a restaurant chain for 20 something years, different, 2 different restaurant chains, but I was very, very good at what I did. The stress on that job, but I was young, single, and full of energy, and that kind of stress, you'd have thought I'd have had anxiety. I mean, they were coming after me, but no, nothing up until the wheelchair. And then, that was just fear of being in the situation that I was in outside of the Walmart that drove it. You know, when you're helpless and you're unable to protect yourself, I think that was, you know, what drove me. But the lockdown part was what was amazing to me, because I'm walking around
Yeah.
after going, why did we, and I'm not alone. Why was it that people after the lockdown had this anxiety going out and getting back in public, and their behavior was changed? I don't know if you noticed. They were like aggressive. I walked into the Walmart, and this poor little, I think it was a little old man, was sitting there in a scooter cart, right? He did not have a mask on. And these bullies with these masks on were in his face. He's like 90. My God, he's 90 years old. And they're in his face because he didn't have a mask. And it was like, what is wrong with these people? It was mind-blowing to me.
They were upset at him because he didn't have a
Right.
mask.
It was interesting. I mean, it was the behavior changed during the lockdown, I think. I would think that you guys would do really, really well. And it's no wonder you're packed, because people
We did do well.
people were very afraid. I mean, we were told all kinds of things. Remember? It was all.
But the question is why?
Why were we told that, or
No,
why?
why were we afraid?
Well, exactly. Well, when you're told something over and over again, don't we believe it? Doesn't sometimes, and they always say when you're told something over and over again, it finally becomes truth to people. So they're telling us you have to stay away from people. You can't see your loved ones. Your loved ones, the people in the nursing homes were dying alone. Give me a flipping break.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't one to believe in the lockdown. I did not. I was like, heck no. The mask kicked in my asthma. I literally couldn't breathe because it was lowering my oxygen. I would go and walk and all of a sudden almost fall over because my oxygen was so low because of the stupid mask. Take the mask off, and I'm like, the lungs filled up, and I was like, holy cow. So I had to stop wearing that mask. So, but for me, I just look people in the eye, hello, and smile. The smile that you put on your face when people are masked, they're like, I had somebody wore a mask
can't
with
even
a
see
smile.
it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But somebody put a smile on a mask and was wearing that around, and I thought, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
That is brilliant, because people were, oh, you know, we don't want to be near you. But we believed what was being told. And I think that was, you know, the fear that people are, you know, they try to force on people. And I think psychologically, I think this is where, I think it did a lot of damage. I know that a lot of kids are expressing issues with anxiety after that, like a lot of teenagers.
What is anxiety?
I don't know. You tell me. You're the expert. You tell me what anxiety is. Is it different for
Most
each
people don't
individual?
realize that it's embedded in your nervous system, so you can't even get rid of it.
So why not?
Because it's a part of your nervous system. It's a protective mechanism that, you know, according to evolution, it protects you from the rustle in the bushes. So
It's fight or flight, right? Is what you're referring to.
that's the result.
Right, because you would be, but that's embedded, and it's part of that, is what you're saying.
It's a protective mechanism.
So
Without it, you wouldn't be thinking about something that could go wrong.
right, and we might walk into dangerous situations.
So it has utility. It's just when we don't manage it well, when we just kind of let it get out of control.
And how
I think Inside Out 2 did a really good job at showing what anxiety can do when it gets out of control.
Inside Out 2? What's that?
It's a movie by Disney, Pixar.
Oh, like that cartoon movie. I'm sorry, I don't watch cartoon movies, but I've heard of that. Is that the one where the little emotions? I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah,
And so,
it's exactly right.
You said number 2 is the one that people should watch,
Yes,
because that kind of explains it.
yes. And it shows how from adolescence, how it could get out of control, and then you get into your adulthood and you don't know how to manage it. So what happens is over time, people develop panic attacks, and then they don't even know why they're panicking anymore. They just have a panic attack out of nowhere. But anxiety, unmanaged, gets out of control very quickly.
And how do you manage it? How does somebody, manage it?
So there's this feeling that comes up in you, and sometimes people call it like butterflies or a nervous type of feeling. And like something's bubbling inside of them, you know. Sometimes people feel it in their neck and they feel like it's getting hot, you know, but it's the thought that precipitates the feeling. So you think, then you feel, and then you behave.
Oh,
So if you're interpreting whatever you're seeing or hearing, feeling, touching, tasting as a threat, then you're going to experience anxiety. And the more that you do that feedback loop, it gets more hardwired. And then next thing you know, you have a panic attack even without you.
is it, how do they handle it? How are some of the ways? I mean, not everybody's not the same, right? Everybody's different, and everybody probably has a different way of handling it, right? So what are some ways that people could handle anxiety?
So the first thing you have to do is you have to check in. So as soon as you have a feeling, you have to take a breath and check in what thought went across my awareness to generate this feeling. And then you have to evaluate, is the thought rational or irrational? If it's irrational, you usually kind of check in, like if someone, my best friend, was going through this situation, what would I tell them?
Oh,
You know?
that's a good way
And
to
that's
do
what
it.
you would tell yourself. I can get through this, you know. But most of the time people think they can't get through it because fear is like trying to have a predictable outcome of an experience that you haven't even had yet.
Now, let me ask you. So you're Christian, right? Do you use that in your beliefs in your teaching and training of people to handle this?
If that's what they want.
So,
If that's what they ask for.
okay, so in my other podcasts that I do, we talk about God, Jesus, and faith today, right? And we talk about some of these things. So when we talk about that feeling down here, we're not talking about the feeling of anxiety, but of God talking to you and how that kind of goes in there. And fear comes from Satan. Is it, if you're dealing with a Christian, wouldn't they be able to quiet that down? I mean, Satan can't stand near Jesus Christ. You say Jesus Christ's name and that's gone. But
Yeah, but you're still carnal.
so we're still human. Human is what you're saying. We're still human. And so we have that human part that kicks in and says,
That's why Paul says you have to die daily.
oh,
The moment you enter into fear as a Christian, you're no longer trusting in God. That means you're in pride.
ooh,
And Proverbs talks about that pride goes before the fall.
yeah,
So first of all, the scripture says to cast down any thought or any imagination that tries to exalt itself against the knowledge of Christ. So the moment you have a thought and you start to feel anxiety, you're taking on that thought. And in Matthew, it says not to take the thought, right? Because we usually say, oh, I'm
Right.
afraid and this and that. But then the scripture also says he didn't give you a spirit of fear,
right.
but of power, love, and a sound mind. So that's how I will also in CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, they say to reframe your thoughts. For Christians, it's easy. They don't have to come up with something magical. They just refer back to scripture.
Right.
Because if the scripture tells you, think on whatever's lovely, pure, good report, anything that's virtuous, right? It tells you what to think on. So if you're thinking on something other than pure, lovely, good report, virtuous, then you're in pride.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you have no idea how many people you just helped right there. Because I think that's important. We think different when we're Christian than regular, but we still have that human side.
Yeah.
And there's still sometimes other issues. It's not just anxiety, right?
Yeah.
And so what other types of, you mentioned anger. Okay. So this is the holidays, all right? I will tell you, we have a lot of people who have anger issues. There's suicides, there's depression. All of that happens around the holidays, right? Isn't this a heightened alert time?
Yes. Sometimes people go through anger. You have to know that anger is a secondary emotion. That means something else had to precipitate it. It could even just been you were hungry.
Oh, really?
But most of the time, anger is like you experience anxiety, so then you get irritable. You're depressed, so you get irritable, and that leads to anger. So anger is the result of
One of them.
or
Something else
like
going on.
you're interpreting that you don't have control over something, so you have to get angry.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you're losing control. There's something you're interpreting about the world. So an event happens. Let's say we're a family, and I come over, and you're like, but let's say I'm an introvert, and you ask me to come over, and then you're like, you're going to help me host this party. The first thing that's going to happen to me is my anxiety is going to raise, because I know that as an introvert, I'm going to have an issue with being around a bunch of people.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
People who are more geared to introversion, it's almost like they get drained from being around people.
Yeah.
So you have to take breaks. Think about the kid who's losing their mind at the party, the birthday party. If you just go for a walk with them for 15 minutes, they'll get recharged and they can come back to the party.
Oh, nice.
You know, if they're an extroverted kid, think about having an extroverted kid who's all outgoing and the mom is introverted.
Mm-hmm.
That's a disaster scenario, because the kid wants to go and he gets frustrated to the mom. Then the mom looks at the kid like the kid's a problem, and then the kid gets self-conscious, and they grow up with that self-consciousness.
Oh,
Trying
wow.
to please people,
I never thought
what
of
I mean?
things like that. I mean, it's really interesting because you're hitting on half of America, really. I mean, really, half of the world. Because we as moms, I have 4 kids, all of them completely different. You have children. They're different. It's like their personalities are different. Some are extrovert, some are introvert. And you go, how do I motivate them? You know, how am I going to get them to where they can be good, productive members of society, right? But I never really thought of like individually like that, or even considered that like I'm an extrovert in some things and an introvert in other things. This, for me, this conversation, very awkward and hard for me. I'm not one to talk about feelings like this. I just don't. But to think about my children being different than me in that manner, and how I should handle it differently is absolutely mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing because I never thought of it.
So a lot of times we think that other people think like us. So we'll say, we'll say it all the time. Like, I can't believe they didn't use their turning signal. I can't believe they didn't vote for this person, or they didn't.
I'm a little
whatever.
harder when I drive. I'm not like that. I'm a little harder. I'm like, oh my God, they got me out.
Because you're assuming that they think like you.
Yeah.
That
I guess
I'm going
so.
to be conscientious like everyone else.
Oh yeah. I'm going to try
Or
not to.
they're going to be, but
Try
everybody's not. Everybody's in their own world. They have their own set of issues, their own set of problems. And a lot of times a person makes a look at you or something and you assume it's about you. And they could be just thinking, oh, I forgot to send out the birthday cards.
Oh, women do that a lot because we are doing like 10,000 things in our head at one time.
Yeah.
It's all different. Now, let's jump over to marriage, because that's a really interesting thing that you said. So sometimes, and I don't want to get too detailed here, but sometimes, men and women think differently, right? We're different
Not
species.
sometimes, always.
We're like different. And it's absolutely astounding to me that, I've read all these books on marriage and relationships and all of this, and I'm going, this works, but that person was really crazy when they wrote this, just like one not.
Yeah.
It's kind of like those baby books you read and you're going, what the hell? What kind of children did you have? And did you even have kids before you wrote the book, So when you talk about your spouse, your significant other, sometimes it can be really hard to deal with their different style. Even communication is completely different. And it's like, if you were talking to a newlywed couple, what's some advice that you would give them to have a really good relationship with each other?
Make sure your own insecurities don't show up in the relationship.
So how do you do that?
Anytime you experience a negative emotion, you have to ask yourself, where is that coming from? Why is it so important to me that they did whatever they did?
So you get in the middle of a fight, and we've had some humdingers. I've been married 19 years.
Fights are good.
Well, I think so too. But we always come back to an apology.
That's how relationships stay.
Thank you.
Because they come.
We have
It's
to
not
come
the
back.
fights, it's the inability to return.
Right. And it's too easy for people to go, I'm just walking away.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. I think that you really, before you get married, you need to make sure you ask yourself, are you really committed? Because that commitment is permanent. It's not something that you should just throw away. Long-term marriages, I think, they're committed to one another. They sometimes don't like each other. Like, I'll be honest, sometimes I don't like what my husband does. I don't like him when he's like that. But that doesn't mean I don't love him. It just means that I don't agree with what he's doing.
Because you have a preference.
Right. And so I have to let my own feelings go, hey, I still love him no matter what, happens. I still love him. And I'm willing to, I want to continue to fight for this. Now, I found that there are lines in the sand that can't be crossed. And I told him right up front at the beginning of our marriage, here's the line. Don't ever cross that line. This is, you can't go back from this. Everything else we can deal with.
Yes.
Don't ever cheat on me. And you know what I told him? I said, I know where to hide the bodies. So that makes it easy for him. He's like, oh, never mind. And he knows my dad. So he knew my dad. So he's like, I believe her. No, he knew we were kidding, but he got the point. Don't ever cheat on me. I won't ever cheat on you. Do not ever cheat on me. We're in this together. We're partners. And I think that for me is, the partnership. And you and your wife are partners, right? And it's not just, it's a partnership in a marriage, which is different than a business partner. In a business partner, you can sever relationships and you're gone and you don't see them ever again. But in a marriage, you get up every morning and see him, right?
Yes.
So some of those arguments, and I remember early on, my husband at one point tried to leave. He was mad, and he was so fuming. He got in the car and he was leaving. He was done, and he gets in the car, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? And I follow him out. The kids were crying. I follow him outside, and he tries to start the car. The car wouldn't start. Car's always perfectly running. There was nothing wrong with that car, but it wouldn't start. He tried it 4 times and it wouldn't start. By the 4th time, I was rolling. His window was down. He stopped. Stop laughing. I'm like, is God giving you a signal here? You're not going anywhere. But when you're first married, I think this is really important for people to understand. How do they, what are some ways that they can put that thought, hey, I got to check myself. Give myself a moment, and then what? What do? You check yourself, and you do what?
You ask them to rephrase whatever they said in a different way.
But if you're in an argument, how are you going to do that? You're like in a
So you're already in the heated argument. At that point, you need to go take a break. The Dr. Julie and John Gottman state that if your heart rate gets over 88 beats per minute during a conversation, you can no longer hear the person. There's no reason to talk anymore because you're in a flight or fight.
Oh, so
you can't already even hear them.
You're already in that mode.
Yeah. You got adrenaline, cortisol, acetylcholine is now flowing in you, and you're in flight or fight. Your body thinks you are in a life and death situation.
So it's I'm right or you're wrong. And it's like, I gotta.
No, they're a threat.
Oh, it goes so far.
That's why that's why they can't hear you.
You can't communicate.
And even sometimes you might say, I said this to you, but because their heart rate was up, they can't hear it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we've had that one go around. I've said this to you, but I told you this already.
Your limbic system, which houses your amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and nucleus accumbens, is closer to your spine or your spinal cord than your frontal lobe is. So you're always going to react before you think. You know what I'm saying? But you can, through repetition and kind of paying attention to yourself, you can kind of teach yourself to think before you react.
So how, when you're getting married or, and you do couples therapy, right? Prior to marriage?
If a pastor reaches out to me, They'll
Okay.
say, I want them to meet with you a couple times before I marry them.
Okay, so because we've seen that, you always watch TV and you see these kinds of things, but for newlywed couples, are there any questions that you ask them that
Yeah.
help them through situations like that?
I'll ask them, do you know about your insecurities or your traumas, or do you plan on projecting it on your partner? And they might say, well, I don't know. Well, how do you fight? Do you stonewall and get in the car and run away? Are you constantly antagonizing the person? Like they need the break, but you keep running towards them and they need the break? What happens when you get afraid? What do you do? How do you act? How do you mitigate that? And that person, if they can't answer it, they're going to have the 4 horsemen that the Gottmans talk about, which is criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. Within 98%, they can predict a divorce if any of those 4 are evident in your relationship. If you're always criticizing your partner, or if you're getting defensive anytime your partner opens their mouth, or you look down on your partner in contempt, or you run away from them, like freeze and just kind of go within yourself. Any of those are evident in your relationship, you're doomed. Yeah. And the only reason why those get evident is the person isn't working on themselves.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You have to work on yourself. Because
marriage is perfect. It's the humans in the...
Oh my gosh. That's so brilliant. Marriage is perfect because the human beings who are involved in the marriage that aren't perfect.
You put a human anywhere, they mess everything up.
Yeah. There was so much I didn't know about my husband prior to marrying him. Like he hid a lot. And I didn't know. And it was over the course of the years of marriage that I learned about these issues that he had in his past that I was just totally oblivious to. I had no idea the violence in his family. I had no idea the behavior. Now after witnessing all of some of the stuff that, I was never a part of and would never stand around or put up with. I've learned that, he had to get over that. And I think he thought it was normal.
Yeah, people, yeah.
Like he thought the abuse was normal. And I was like, what the heck are you telling me?
That's why sometimes you ask people like, it's like you like drama.
Yeah. Oh,
but because drama feels like peace.
Those people, I can't be around. Those people who like drama all the time. My daughter's going through, she's a teenage girl, almost 18. She'll be 18 on the 23rd. Teenage girl. And people, like there's people, you remember when you were a teenager, those friends of yours that are always about drama, there was always something. And you're like, can't you take a breath? I don't want to be around you anymore. And you finally break off that friendship because you just can't deal with their drama.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I've learned for me, people who are always under that drama, things happen. Somebody's always going to have something happen. But if you're constantly going for the same kind of guy all the time, you go for the same kind of guy who beats you all the time, I am telling you, that's on you. Yeah. You are accepting this behavior. You need to stop. But they can't. Right, exactly. But are you going to sit there and watch them? Like that's the choice you have to make, right? As their friend.
Yeah, you have to sit there and watch them.
Are you going to sit and watch them and continue to watch this and put up with this? Or are you going to just say, hey, when you're ready, come back to me? I've had friends, we've had to have a break. Like that break that you're talking about, this lasted years because I couldn't handle the drama that they constantly were under. All of a sudden they grew up and that drama is way minimized and they're a different person now. And then it's like, I like you again. I can be around you again. Let's go shopping or let's go get coffee or let's go, do something. And I constantly, I've changed, they've changed and I like them. But for a while there, sometimes you just have to step away because you can't be around that all the time. I think when people see this stuff over and over again, they take it on themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so your friend might be going and getting beat all the time and putting up with it. And you're watching this and you're thinking this is normal behavior. That's not normal. You need to.
It's normal to them.
Right. It's normal to them. And that's the thing I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Is that it was normal in his family relationship that this behavior was, but our family wasn't like that. My dad stopped that. In my family, now I think every family has abuse, right? Every family has some type of anger issue or abuse. There's somebody, right? So my grandfather's father witnessed his dad hunt down his wife in front of the children, the three children, murder her in front of the children. And then, of course, he was taken off to prison, died in prison. The children were raised by her side of the family. And my grandfather still brought that abuse down. So the abuse went from his dad's father to his dad, to him, to his children.
We call that epigenetics.
What does that mean?
It's the study of how the way that our genes are expressed get passed down from one generation to the next.
Is it the genes or is it the behavior? Because to me,
it's embedded in the genes as going to the next generation.
How scary is that?
I can't remember what university it was, but they did a study where they made these rats afraid of strawberries.
Oh, strawberries. I love strawberries.
It skipped a generation, and the generation after that came out afraid of strawberries.
Oh, weird.
So if you have a tendency towards anger,
violence,
you can pass it down because it's embedded in cellular memory. Like our cells have
we
memory.
can stop it, right? Because my dad went, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
It was a stunning thing. I mean, when I hear, the stories, and they really restricted what we knew about Grandpa and Grandma. But I witnessed how my grandfather talked to my grandmother one time, and that's all it took. And I was like, I had never heard my dad talk to my mom like that, or my mom talk to my dad like that. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know, the whole thing until I got much, much older. But I was a teenager when I saw it. And it was weird. It was like a light switch went on. And the way he talked to her, and I was like, Dad, and I didn't want to leave her. Like, I was like, we can't leave her here. And my dad was like, we have to step away. And when we grew up, there was no violence in our house. We didn't have that. My parents had an occasional argument. We would go to the basement. That's where they didn't want us hearing the argument. They didn't argue in front of us. One time I snuck on the stairs and I saw my mom thought my dad was going to hit her. And my dad was like, I would never. And he left because he needed a break. He came back and they talked, but not like they should have. I think my parents' relationship as I was growing up was different when they got older than when they were younger, married. But the generation, he was able to stop it. My mom's side had the violence. Her dad locked them in a boxcar because he was afraid his wife was going to cheat on him. She had 7 children.
Like a train boxcar?
Yeah. That's what they lived in. And he locked them in there for a week. So you know what she's doing? I mean, they must have had a vent in there because she could cook. She's making fudge. My mom says whenever they had a fight, I always knew they had a fight because she was making fudge. And my mom was the oldest of the children, and she was taking care of the little ones. And a week, he finally comes back. Now, eventually, he hung himself. He hung himself eventually. But it was harder for her to stop than it was for my dad. And so my dad was really the one that went, I'm not putting up with this, and you're not doing this to the kids. And so that violence really stopped. When Chuck came on, I had never seen that until after my dad had died. And then that's when I started seeing the full-blown violence there. And I told him, I'm not putting up with this. You can come with me, or I am, and I have one child. I was pregnant with another one, and I was like, I will leave, and you won't see us again. This I'm not tolerating. He was like, oh, I'm coming with you. And so he came, but it took a long time for him to understand that this was not normal behavior. I didn't understand how he thought this was normal behavior. So people go through this, right? And especially the holidays are very hard. People think about, all of family and all of this money troubles and all of this stuff gets on them, and then they get angry, and then they all the violence comes up. But they could stop it by taking that break is the first thing, right?
Yep.
And just stop and taking a pause.
And then evaluate how you're looking at the situation.
Now, sometimes, let me ask you, when you say evaluate, I'm thinking, oh, you're automatically going to evaluate the situation in the middle of it. You don't. You're talking about stopping, taking a breath. If you can do it quick, you're fine, right? But you don't, in the beginning, you don't know how to do it, right? So you got to step back, take a break, breathe, and do what? Let's just like 5 minutes,
Until
10
your
minutes.
heart rate comes back down.
So you have
Then
to.
you can re-engage.
So you wait, and both of your heart rates have to come down, right? Because
No, who cares about them?
oh, you're so bad.
Because you're the one out of control.
Well,
It doesn't matter about them. They're in control of themselves.
Right, but what if they're out of control too? Like, I mean,
You can't do nothing about them. You can
Right.
walk away yourself and wait till you're good, and then come back and say, "Are you ready to continue this conversation?" And if they say no, you have to respect that.
That is one thing that Chuck and I practice all the time. Is that okay? We need to stop, take a break. If we're in a fight, stop and take a break, take a breath.
And it sounds dumb, but it's no. Your heart rate is up.
Yeah, well,
And if you don't want to take a break for a long time, do jumping jacks. The break is to allow the adrenaline to get out of your bloodstream.
oh wow, I never knew that. I mean, I knew we took a break because I had to calm down. Mm-hmm. And
That's why people clean when they're mad, because they're trying to metabolize the adrenaline.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah. You're so spot on right. I was working in Anaheim, and I would leave at 4 a.m. I'd come back and get it back at 5:36 at night. He would be home with the kids. The dishes would be piled up. He didn't do it. He did his own dish.
Yeah.
I mean, this took me years to get him to understand. They're babies. You have to wash their dishes. You can't just wash your own plate and fork. That's not doing the dishes. I can see what's crazy stuff. But through years, I would come back and I would be so angry. I was like, I didn't even want to talk to him. I'm like,
Because what did that mean to you?
right. It was like, what? Why is there a pile of dishes?
No, what did it mean to you that you didn't do the dishes?
That he wasn't helping.
And
He wanted me to do it all. And that's where I was mad, because he wanted me to do it all. And I didn't like that.
And if it were true, what would that mean for you?
I'd have kicked him in the pants. Like, I was mad. Hopping
Not
mad.
what would you do? What would that mean to you if it were true that he wanted you to do all the work?
I chose wrong. That would be bad.
That's where the anger comes from. You're mad at yourself because you believe you chose wrong.
Yeah.
You know
I think you're right.
Everybody,
I think
that's
you're
why
right.
you take the second to be, because I'm experiencing this emotion right now and I'm correlating it with this person, but that person has nothing to do with how you feel.
Yeah. And my husband's always talking about how you feel. Oh, it's on you. How do you feel? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, you're the one. Nobody can make you feel.
Yeah, no one.
And that's what he always says. Nobody can make you feel a certain way. And I'm like, no, that's not true. You can make me feel mad,
He can't.
but I don't understand that. See, that's a guy point of view. Because to me, if you're gonna pile the laundry room up to the window high with clothes every single week, that's on you. You better fix that, because I'm not here able to do it. I don't have the time to do it. So you need to be in charge of something.
I see what you're saying, but it's not a guy point of view. It's science.
Well,
You're only upset because of what you're thinking about the situation.
you might, I hate to say you're right, but I think you might be right, because Chuck's always reading. He's like reading everything. He remembers everything. I don't know. His mind is like a trap. He has this image of himself being like not smart, but he's like one of the smartest men I know. And like he'll be able to talk to you about that science stuff. To me, sometimes I'm like, I get there's important things in science that I want to understand, and that kind of thing. But to me, going and sitting there going, you're telling me that you can't make me feel a certain way. That's not right. You can make me feel a certain way.
we don't help the situation, but it is
Right.
ultimately up to you.
It's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's because we'll tell the kids, a lot of times the reason why we believe that, because we've been telling the kids, like, you're frustrating me. So a 2-year-old can pull an adult out of a powerful disposition into a primal or animalistic disposition.
Wow.
So if you're losing your mind around your kid, people bring their kids to me all the time and like, fix my kid. And it's almost like Caesar Milan. I have to rehabilitate the parent.
Yeah.
If you want the kid to act right, I got to get the parents on to act right.
You're right. You're right today. Like today, I think today's different than when. How old are you? You're how old?
42.
So you're still, you're a good, almost 12 years younger than me, something like that. But we were kind of raised almost in the same generation. Raising kids back when we were raised was totally different than today.
Yeah.
Like when we were kids, I would never talk back to my parents. I would never smart off. We didn't, walk around cursing in the house. We didn't disrespect each other.
Because that was the expectation of the culture.
Right. Exactly. But it's changed.
Because the expectation of the culture changed.
So how do we get back to that?
Why do you want to get back to that?
Wouldn't you want your children to grow up to be respectful of others?
Mm-hmm.
But they aren't now. Like I've watched my kids.
We created the monsters.
No.
Because we kept saying, I want to give my kids everything I didn't have.
Yeah, but that's not, my kids are not like that. Like, you know what? Okay, let me put it this way.
I'm speaking in generalities.
Okay.
Like we say, I want to give my kids everything they didn't. So now they're not going to earn anything. And you're wondering why they feel entitled.
Yeah. Now
you gave it to them.
That's true. And I think
they never earned it.
But that's society in general. So how do we get back to and I'm thinking of my kids, and this is Christmas that we're talking about right now, because it's Christmas time, it's the holidays. My kids know we don't have money. They go on Facebook Marketplace and they're finding these things that they could get for somebody else for free. Everything has to be for free. And even my son is taking this, and I don't want to say it project because I don't want my daughter to hear, but taking this item, rejuvenating it into some dream thing that she's always wanted, and making this thing for nothing. But this is the kind of way that they grow up. They're not entitled to anything. But I watch their friends, and that's where I'm having the issues. Some of their friends have real issues. Like, they're like, really, I don't understand these other kids. And I know that my kids have to learn to be around them, and they're doing well. My kids are doing well. It's hard. How do we protect our kids though? Because I feel really bad. Some of these kids, they
have to be solidified in their identity.
So what do you mean by that?
They have to know who they are.
The kids
if you know who you are, no one will be able to sway you, and you won't be a follower. So they'll be able to be around anyone, and they'll be leading everyone else.
See, that's
people
what
who know who they are, right?
Right.
But most people put their identity in what's happening to them.
Oh, even as adults.
Mm-hmm. So they lose their job, all of a sudden they're nothing. They lose their spouse, all of a sudden they're nothing. Yeah. They lose their kids, all of a sudden they're nothing.
Yeah.
Because they forgot who they are apart from their spouse, apart from their kids.
Oh, that's that empty nest syndrome?
It could lead to that.
Like the whole, or you have that, what is that the men usually go through in the midlife crisis, right? Yeah. It's kind of the same thing, right? Because we forget who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We forget what we're about, and we stop doing things we love to do, and we start doing, other things that we don't really like to do.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to be confident enough in ourselves to really know who we are as an individual. And then jumping back to the marriage, it would be the same for a marriage, two individuals coming together to form a marriage and who we are as a couple, right?
Yep. The individuals have an identity. The couple has an identity. and you have each individual child has an identity.
With the parent.
And people don't even realize that each child grew up with a different parent. Because when you had your firstborn, you didn't think the same way when you had your secondborn.
Oh no, by the fourth one, I was like, holy cow.
So that fourth child didn't even have the same type of relationship that the firstborn had with you.
Yeah.
It's not negative.
No.
It's just something to be aware of. So when they're like, hey, mom was like this, I'm like, mom's mean. You know, they'll have a different perspective or an experience of whoever it is they grew up with.
You are so smart. I don't know how I'm just amazed at how with it you are. Your patients are very, very lucky. You laugh, but I'm serious. Like you don't understand when we talk about relationships and family, you know exactly what you're looking at. When you deal with your wife, do you deal with her like that? And
90s,
I don't mean deal, but I mean, you know what I mean. As you in
I
your
have
relationship.
to, all the things I suggest to my clients, I have to also do myself. She could say something and I'll feel this rage come up inside of me, right? And then I have to take that time and be like, okay, what thought just went across my awareness? Because, you know, so I'll say to her, this is the thought I'm having right now. Am I interpreting this situation? She'd be like, no, this is what happened. And then I'm like, oh, misunderstood.
And that's 90% of what we do is misunderstand each other, right?
Because I didn't check in. I'm assuming you're mad at me. Or I'm assuming that something that
Chuck
this
does
thing
that all
happened.
the
Or
time,
I'm
assuming.
And why can't I just ask you, hey, I'm feeling anxious right now. Are you feeling anxious? And then if you go, no, okay, well, I need a break because I gotta check this out.
That's, you know, you are so, like I said, you are so smart. Because sometimes that's what we do, you know. And you've been married how many years?
Wow, 5.
Oh, wait until you get to 19. It's
We got married in 1999. Sorry,
99. That's
2019.
20. Like, dude, you were a baby.
I was a junior in 1999. But yeah, we got married in 2019.
Your wife is lovely. I love her. And you said you have 4 kids? And
2 from a previous marriage.
You were married before?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then now 5 years into it. The first time it was 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
What happened?
Just grew apart.
Isn't that sad?
You didn't have
that basis, though.
Yeah.
Did you have that? Because you weren't working as a therapist then. And you weren't looking at it differently. Were you studying at that time?
Yes.
And so you were learning more.
Yeah. And so I analyzed my entire self through my bachelor's, master's program, and part of my doctorate program. So I was kind of really taking a fine-tooth comb through my entire life as to why I was doing what I was doing, why I made the mistakes I made, and so that I wouldn't repeat them.
That's amazing, and that's what we need to do. We need to do that for ourselves. But I think we forget.
Yeah.
I think people you know, take on a lot, and we don't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's where somebody like you comes in.
Yes. Or Jesus.
Well, that's the number one for me.
Turning to Jesus first.
That's exactly how I do it. Like, Jesus has always been my best friend. He's always been there for me, never let me down, always carried me when I needed to be carried, you know, protected me when I needed to be protected. He shut my mouth when I needed to shut my mouth. Because I tell you, sometimes I just want to say things. And I used to, in a younger day, say them. And, you know, he shut my mouth when I needed to shut my mouth. Or open it when I needed to open it. And said things through me that...
We need like a duct tape ministry.
That's it. We do. We need it.
Because remember, Jesus was like, I don't say anything the Father doesn't tell me to say.
Yeah.
Or I don't do anything. If the Father tells me not to do it, I don't do it. If the Father tells me to do it, I'll do it. That's how we should be living.
Right.
If you're saying something outside of Scripture, especially towards your spouse, you are now talking about, it would be like, okay, so you're talking about me, right? And would you talk about your best friend the way that you're talking to me? And you'd probably say no. But if you're talking about yourself like that, I might say, you shouldn't talk about my best friend like that.
Oh, that's good.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't like
I
you
don't
talking
think
about
like
my
that.
best friend.
I don't think like that. That is brilliant. You have,
Especially when, she hears me, being on city council or something like that, I come home frustrated. And I can't get these guys to work together. And she'll go, I'm not going to stand in agreement with you on that, because I know you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you.
Oh, put you
I
right
got to
away.
reframe, you have to, that's why we work together, you want to catch each other on stuff.
Yeah,
Hold each other accountable.
right. And hold each other up when we need to,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Be a shoulder to cry on.
Mercy.
And protect each other.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, lately, especially.
Don't
But
forget about the mercy part,
yeah,
right?
have mercy on each other.
Because everyone says, oh, no one's perfect. But
And-
we act like everybody's perfect.
Right. And we blame them when they're not. And we blame them when they're not. And that's, people make mistakes.
Yeah.
There's certain lines, like there's my line in the sand. You don't cross my line. That would be the last time you ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that to me is the unforgivable line. If you cross that line, I don't have the line in the sand like the politicians do. Oh, if you cross that, I'll just move it back. I'll just move it back. I don't have that moving line. My line doesn't move. It's everything else is in front of the line, but there's that line. Just don't cross that. In that relationship, don't cross that line, and we're good.
Yeah.
And I think, and my husband's never he's never mentioned his line, but I don't know. I think it's because we grow together. And I was being funny when I said it before we got married, but I'm like, it still holds. You don't cheat on each other. I don't believe in cheating. I don't believe in, running around behind somebody's back. That's not, especially your spouse, because they are your best friend. But I also think a lot of our 19 years of marriage has grown in Christ. And so when we started out, one of the things that we did was get baptized together as a family, him and me. We got baptized together, and we wanted a solid foundation for our family to be built on.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the stuff, the crud that comes up, is the light shines on it, right? It can't stand in the light, but we can see it and we could deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it's just garbage that needs to be swept up and thrown away. Others of it, we need to.
And you don't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't wait, because the longer you wait, the worse it gets.
That weed gets stronger.
Yeah. And one of the things I found is that we also, when we have a fight, we don't go to bed angry. Now, I have slept on the couch, and he could sleep up in the bedroom, but I'm not going to bed angry there. I'll just stay downstairs and watch TV until I calm down. Right? I don't care what the stupid show is on TV, but I'll watch something. But yet, generally speaking, I'm the one that goes out and goes, I think let's talk about this again. And sometimes he's not ready, even the next day. But then all of a sudden by midday, late afternoon, he's like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I'm sorry too. And then we talk about it. Then we talk about the issue. And it's interesting because the kids watch us do this. And so they know that if we have a fight, it's just a fight. There's no, it's not like we're not going to blows, and we're not, saying things that are too bad. Now, sometimes we'll be like saying stupid stuff, and we have to apologize for it, but we do it in front of the kids. We'll apologize in front of the kids so they know that this is not acceptable. You don't treat your spouse like that.
Yeah.
We aren't perfect, and we screwed up.
If you want to last.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we want to teach our kids, because being in a relationship with your spouse should be a lasting, lifelong, relationship, but that it's not easy. You have to work at it. And each individual person has to go and say, hey, I'm making the choice to do this. But if they don't, that's when marriages fall apart, right? People going, like you said, different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had from the beginning created that foundation like you have done now
Yep.
with your wife, it would have lasted
Mm-hmm.
because you're on that solid rock,
Yep.
So I think that it's amazing to hear you talk like this. So I'm used to you being on council, and I didn't even go to your council meetings, but I've seen you out, at events. We've been on boards together, always very articulate, but I had no idea that this was even what you did. Not until recently, and I was like, what?
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 A lot of people don't know. They're
You're
like,
all-
what are you going to do now that you're on off council?
Go back
continue
to
to-
what, continue what I do normally.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get paid. We're not like big cities.
Yeah.
We're like, you had how many? About 80,000, right? In your city?
95.
Okay, 95,000. We're at like 60,000 right now, 50,000, between 55 and 60. And that's people. Because we're talking 55,000. They're like, what?
Yeah.
55,000 what? Trees? No, people in our communities, right? So you have 80,000 people in your community, and they only know the political side of you as a council member or a board member. We don't talk about sometimes what we do outside.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have time for that. Frankly, I mean, it's like we're rush, right? We go from meeting to meeting.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to connect with someone in a different city and get to know people for really who they are. Because the political side of us is not really who we are. It's just the political side. It's the side of us that is, in our cases, fighting for our citizens and trying to help as best as we can, right?
Yes.
And that's the whole reason you were in. That's the whole reason I'm in, is to be their voice where they can't be.
But there will still be people who will see you as a corrupt individual
They don't even get a chance.
because you're in the office.
Right. Well, and because they go, oh, you're a politician.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. The case is, yes, I'm technically a political figure,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a leader, community leader.
Yeah.
I'm a community fighter. I'm someone who's going to, who's really your voice. And they don't even know it, because for me, I don't do that. I'm not like, okay, you'll see politicians get on their stupid phones and brag about everything that they've done, or make stuff up and say, I've done this and I've done this. I've helped this person today, and I helped do this, and I went and did this. And it's all a line of bull. It's all fake. They're lying to the public to keep their position. That's not me. That's not you. I tend to do things in private. Well, it's public, but it's private. So if I'm helping someone, I've stopped, helped people. We had this one lady who was outside of town. She broke down. And so she was a young woman. I pulled up behind her. Of course, we're in at the time it was a regular minivan, right? And my husband was going to get out, and I go, you better not get out, because she's a single woman alone. She's going to freak. And it was dark. So I got out of the vehicle, and of course I'm thinking, okay, the last time I got out of a vehicle when there was an accident, it was somebody who threatened to kill the police and threatened to shoot me right there on the thing. I was freaked out. So I'm very cautious about doing that anymore. So here I am, very nervous about getting out and helping this woman. I knew she was more scared. So I got out, and she had a flat tire. She didn't know what she was going to do. She didn't have anybody to help. We called AAA because we had AAA. So we had them fix her tire, and then we got her on her way. But I never, until this very moment, never said anything. This was years ago. I've had people die in the streets, and I'm holding people in my arms. This stuff is personal and private. It's between me and that person.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have politicians who want to go on and talk about fake things that they've done just to edify themselves. And there are good people like you, good people like me, who want to help their communities, who don't play those political games.
Yeah.
And those are the people that you want to surround yourself around. It's so important for us to have political leaders who are not corrupt or not corruptible. So the first thing for me is, do they know Jesus? Second of all, do they really know Jesus? Because they're politicians, they can lie, right? Their behavior outside of the political life tells you, right, who they are and what they do. If you've got someone who, I'm not a Hare Krishna Christian. I'm not a on the street corner, you're going to hell if you don't believe this. That's not who I am. I am what I call quiet Christian. I believe it's a relationship between you and Jesus Christ and God, and that God wants that relationship, and it's personal. So for us to talk about it here on this podcast is very unusual. I don't usually do this, but that's the who I am outside of politics. People have to understand my Christianity, my faith, is not just about saying, "Oh, I'm better than anyone," because I'm not. I'm like one. It's taken me a long time. Have you ever thought about the disciples? I mean, you're in the psychology business, right? So you're in that mental health thing. Have you ever thought about the disciples?
In what way?
Well, I used to put them on a pedestal, right? I used to think, wow, they're so much more higher than we are. Like they
had their issues.
But I didn't get that. They walked with Jesus. He chose them. They are so cool. And then that side of you comes in and says they had their issues.
Yeah.
Because they were like us. They really weren't somebody on a pedestal. He picked the bottom of the barrel. He picked somebody like me. Bottom of the barrel.
He picked Judas.
He picked all of them. I mean, think of that.
Peter had anger problems.
Oh, yeah. Peter in his mouth. I tell you, up until you'll see me at the dais like this. And if I'm sitting there like that, generally speaking, I'm praying. When I went to see President Trump for the first time, he asked me to come on to talk about the sanctuary state laws. And when he did, I was like, I didn't know what to say to him. I mean, I kept thinking, okay, they came up to me and they go, "You're like Esther." I heard my husband said it. Scott Miller said it to me. I didn't see it. Couldn't figure it out. I've read the book of Esther, didn't understand it. Scott's like, read it on the way, read it again. I read it like 2 or 3 times on the airplane ride to DC. Still didn't see it. Couldn't, he put the blinders on, so that we don't see everything right now. So when I get to the president, and I go to meet him, and I'm sitting across the table from Melissa Melendez, Assemblywoman Melendez, out in front of the cabinet room. That's the room with the oval desk, right? So we're sitting out there, and it's the largest living room you've ever seen, the fanciest furniture. It's all old. It's like millions and millions of dollars you're sitting in. I'm barely wanting to sit on the chair that I'm on. I'm like all freaked out. And Melissa's like, I asked her, how she was doing. She asked me, I said, she asked me if I was nervous. And I was like, no. And she's like, I go, are you? And she's like, yes, of course I'm nervous. I've never met, I'm not used to meeting presidents. And she goes, how are you not nervous? And I went, oh, I left it up to God. He knows what I'm going to say. And she was like, oh, I should have done that. And so then we walk into the Oval Office, and I walk in like I look like a drowned rat. The humidity, my hair is curly. The humidity, I had my hair cut, 2 hours getting ready.
Humid there?
Oh, very. So I walk out the door, and my hair goes whoosh, and I'm going, oh, Lord, I don't have time to go back in and fix it, or I'll be late, and they won't let me in. So I walk out. Now, I had never been to D.C. I walk in there, and actually I had, but I don't remember it, So I'm in heels. And I know you're a man, but don't ever wear heels in D.C. unless you carry them in a bag and wear tennis shoes. Because
Lots of walking.
cobblestone.
Cobblestone.
So when you walk, your heels are like this. So by the time halfway through, I forgot my flag pin. So I go to, I'm like, I'm going to get a flag pin. I got to get my flag pin. So I'm walking around the White House, trying to look for that little gift shop, thinking they've got to have a flag pin. I get there, they have no flag pins. I'm like, are you kidding me? So they sent me to another one. I went to another place. I finally get a flag pin. I go back to the White House, the Eisenhower building. They take everything from us there. We go into this room. I have this conversation with her. I walk into the cabinet room like I've given up, that, my looks are just my looks. I just have, to deal with it. And I was at one point tempted to take my shoes off because I thought, it'd be easier to walk because my feet were just killing me. And then I thought my feet will be black. The president will think, what's this homeless lady here doing? So I decided not to do that. So I get into there and I bebop in there like I'm some blonde bimbo waltzing into this room, totally blinders on, like total blinders. I walk in, I'm like, where's my seat? I walk right over to my seat. Oh, there I am. Well, where's the president? And I'm looking down this long table and around the table, and I'm looking down at the table. And I see there's no name tag, like 3 seats over. And then I saw Melissa Melendez, Assemblywoman Melendez, right next to her. I go, he's got to be next to her because she's the highest ranking elected official here.
Yeah.
And so I look across and I see Melissa. I go, Melissa, come here. And she gives me this kind of funky look. And she goes, I'm looking for my seat. I said, oh, you're over here. And she goes, oh, okay. She comes running over to the other side of the table. She goes, where am I? I go, you're right next to the president. She goes, oh, God. I go, that's right, channel God. And then all of a sudden the blinders go away. And I look across the room, and there's 200 photographers in there.
200.
They were filing in at the same time we were coming in. I had no clue. I'm totally oblivious. So then I'm going, okay, that's weird. Where did they come from? Like, not even seeing them. So we get in there, and I'm like sitting there going, what do I have to offer the president? He has everything at his fingertips. What does somebody from a small town in California have to say to the president of the United States? And I didn't know what to say. And that's where you see me sitting there like this. And I'm talking to God. God, Jesus, what am I going to say? You take it. I don't know what to say to him. You take the words from my mouth, answer him, tell him what he needs to hear.
Sounds like Moses.
I tell you, as soon as I got to me, Melissa was very articulate. She knew the facts, the numbers. The guy next to me, very articulate, gets to me, and you hear when the president talks, the cameras are going crazy, right? Melissa talks. There's a few cameras that go crazy because she's the highest ranking elected official, right? Goes to hint, and the next guy, hardly any. Then they come to me, and the president introduces me. And I lean around him, and I go, Mr. President, can I be frank? And of course, the cameras go crazy. Well, I'm oblivious to this. And I suddenly hear clicking. I'm going, what the heck is that? And he leans around Melissa and around the other gentleman. He goes, please. And then I said, I'm in awe of God's power and how he can take someone who's homeless, put him in as the mayor of the city, set him before the president of the United States who wants to hear the cry of the people. And that's what we're here today to do. And then I proceeded to tell him the heart of the people of California, of San Jacinto, of Hemet, what the individual people said to me the minute they knew I was coming to meet the president. And he wanted to hear it all. And even after the cameras were off and they threw all the photographers out, the president kept coming back. He tells Melissa, thank you for your time. I know your time's valuable. He goes to the next gentleman, thank you so much for your time. Gets to me, and he goes like this, and he takes my hand, he goes, thank you for your time, and he pulls me in like this. And he says, you have a good story. You and I are going to talk again. And then he proceeded to stand there and talk to me, and talk to me, and talk to me. He was supposed to be going to Melania. She had just had surgery, and they pulled him away to keep him on schedule. And I was just sitting there just talking to the president of the United States. And I'm going, afterwards then, I still didn't see the Esther connection. It took me weeks before I got home, and all of a sudden I went, oh my God, now I get it. Now I get it. But it wasn't 3 days later. I got home on Friday, and I think I got home Friday. I get in the very next day. Scott Miller's wife had died. He was our past mayor. We were doing her service that day. I figured I had a I had a radio interview I had to do. So my plan was, and I had it all planned out. I had 4 kids, all Chuck had to do was get the clothes on the kids, get the breakfast, and we were out of the house, and he would take them in, and I would sit in the car and do the radio interview, right? Quiet in the car. That's what I'm thinking. That's the plan. All of a sudden, he starts freaking out. Call your brother, call your brother, call your brother. And I'm like, I knew something was wrong. And I said, give me your phone, give me your phone, give me your phone. And I looked at his phone, and I saw what it said, and instantly my heart fell. And I said, he put on Facebook that my mother is dead. This can't be. This can't be. And I called my brother, and he said, Mom's dead. And I tried to ask questions. He's like, call Joanne. She was with her in that same city. So I called her. She didn't have time to talk. I called my other sister, and I'm on the phone with my other sister. Meantime, the children are trying to wear pajamas to this meeting. They wanted to go to the event for service for her in pajamas. And my darling husband, not good with kids. Okay, let's let him go like that. I'm like, no. And I'm like, eat your breakfast. You go get dressed. I'm taking you, like, and I'm on the phone trying to find out what happened. And I'm like, my sister didn't know. She's like, this makes no sense. My mom had a massive stroke. They're letting her eat alone. Something's wrong with this picture. So I'm like trying to process it, and all of a sudden I hear panic coming out of the other room. And I'm like, what's going on, Mary? Hang on. And I walk around the corner. I went, oh my God, I'll call you back. And I hung up the phone. I see my son trying to do the Heimlich maneuver on my husband, who was choking. And he couldn't barely get his arms around him. And he was trying, and the girls were freaking out. And all of a sudden, I shoved my son, and I didn't mean to shove him so fast, but I shoved him out of the way. I grabbed my husband. I'm hitting him and pulling him up and pulling him up and pulling him up. 5-6 times I did it. Finally, I slammed against the back wall, and it came out.
Yeah.
And I'm sliding down the wall because I'm like done. He's like breathing finally. And I'm going, get your clothes on, kids. We got to get going. And then the phone rings for the interview on the radio. And I'm like, oh my God, get your clothes on. I'm answering this call. I'll be in the office. Be ready and stop choking. And I ran in the other room. I did the interview. I'm still thinking about my mom. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Did the interview. I had no idea what I said. Later on, I didn't even realize I did the interview. I was like, honey, did I do that interview? We get over to the funeral, and I'm going, all of a sudden, I meet one of the old council members, Mark Bartel, and I walk up to him, and I'm going, my mom died. And he went, what? And I burst into tears. And he hugs me, and I was like, don't tell Scott. Don't tell Scott. I don't want him to deal with this. I don't want him to deal with this. So it took me, we left from there. We went to, ICSC in Vegas for a meeting for the city. And so I thought, it's 4 hours closer to Colorado. I knew my sister was wanting to bury my mom in Illinois. Why, I didn't know, but I knew that that's what she was wanting. And I thought, well, we're 4 hours closer if we go from Vegas. So I took the whole family, shoved them in a hotel room, and waited for the call to come. And it didn't come, and it didn't come. And all of a sudden, I got a call to come back. So as soon as the conference was not quite over, I left, had to go back to California, 4-hour drive back to sign some paperwork, and then head out for Colorado. I get out to Colorado, and we stayed a night or two, and I said, we better head to Illinois. So we head over to Illinois, and the entire time I'm talking to God the whole time because I didn't know what to say. And for the first time in my life, dead silent. I remember pulling up and going into Utah, and we had packed a picnic lunch because we had no money. So we had to take our food, and we sat at the picnic tables, and I'm watching the kids at the same place that we went to when we were little. And I'm watching them thinking, my parents were here. We're here. We're here. And getting through that, going the rest of the way, just barely talking at all, pulling in the parking lot to bury my mom. And I'm like, I can't let go of the wheel. I can't get my hands off the wheel. And I'm sitting there holding it. And finally, the kids said something, and I let go of the wheel, and I said, okay, let's get out. And it was just mind blowing. And so I think there's something to say that when we have Jesus there, he's taken that wheel. He's holding my hands. He got me there all the way. But through that whole process, I just kept clinging to that, to my faith. And I think that's one thing that we as Christians have, that we, that people just can't, they can't understand, that when times are like that, we don't take that on ourselves, and we have to rely on that. The stuff that you've learned helps everyone. The stuff that I've learned as a Christian leader, as someone who's got that voice for the people, is that sometimes we have to allow him to do the speaking for us.
Yeah.
Let him take that wheel for us, because sometimes we just can't. Looks like I'm getting the signal that we need to wrap it up, but I want people to understand, what do you have a name for? I know they can reach out to you, and I'm going to put your information in with all of this so they can reach out to you. But do you have a company name, or is it, what do you call it?
It's called New Hope Christian Counseling, and we have an office in Moreno Valley, Marietta, here in Hemet, and West Covina.
And you're Malcolm Lilienthal.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your title again?
Associate Marriage and Family Therapist.
So if you have any issues, or even just want to talk, right?
Yeah.
They can contact you and reach out to you. You're here. Do you work at different offices, or do you do virtual? Do you do?
I just work here in Hemet, and I can do virtual. I have Zoom options that people can, I've talked to people from San Diego, Escondido, and so they don't have to drive. They just do it through Zoom.
Uh-huh.
Some people will drive from San Marcos to come see me.
But this video is going around the world. So if they have problems in, let's say New York, they can reach out to you via Zoom, right? Set a meeting.
They can, but it's a little tricky because my license only covers California. So in other states, we have to be careful as therapists, because if they're having a situation in New York, I can't help them because I'm not physically there.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? So if it's across states, it's more of life coaching.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But life coaching is just as important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything you touched on today, that's all part of it. It's amazing. I'm really, really proud of you. I'm really amazed, but I had no clue that this is everything that you do. And it's an honor and privilege to know you, to consider you a friend, and to know that you are, you're something special. And I think you have a lot to offer. I'm so sad that you didn't get reelected, but I know that this right here is powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful job that you have. So thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to cut it. We want to thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on Crystal Clear. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.